The world is on the edge of collapse. In every corner, chaos spreads. Wars, natural disasters, diseases, and a growing sense that something far greater is coming. In the midst of this, Maria, a woman whose life had been simple but grounded in unshakable faith, begins to question everything. She has always heard of the 144,000, the chosen ones who will be saved during the end times, a mysterious number that sparked curiosity and fear. Yet for Maria, this was always a distant story that didn't affect her daily life, until the day everything changed. One Sunday, as the pastor reads a passage about the 144,000, something shifts within Maria. His words echo in her heart, a call to action and devotion. Only the 144,000 will be saved in the last days. They will be the chosen ones, those who walk the path of truth, who remain firm in their faith and devotion to God, he says. Maria feels an intense pull in her soul. Could she be one of them? This realization sparks a deep prayer in Maria's heart, not just for herself, but for her family, her community, and for all who are lost. She seeks to be among the 144,000, but she understands that true salvation comes from a transformed heart, not from titles or numbers. It's about living a life of faith, serving others, and following Jesus' teachings. The world continues to crumble, and people all around her are lost in fear and confusion. Yet Maria, rooted in her unwavering faith, remains steadfast. Her journey towards becoming one of the chosen is just beginning. But what does it truly mean to be one of the 144,000? Is it about numbers, or is it about the path we walk in our hearts? Maria's journey will show that the path to salvation is not a distant promise. It's a living, breathing reality shaped by love, faith, and personal transformation. Maria's life had always been simple, but deeply marked by faith. She grew up in a small, remote village where traditions and stories of past generations intertwined, passing on wisdom and visions of the future. Among these stories was one that stood out: the biblical prophecies about the 144,000, the chosen ones who would be saved in the last days. This prophecy had always been mentioned during services, but for Maria, it seemed like a distant myth without much impact on her daily life. She grew up with her family in a simple home, where faith was the foundation that held everything together. Her parents, devout and loving, always taught her the importance of living with honesty, being kind and generous with others, and above all, trusting in God. Maria's life seemed to follow a predictable path, a routine marked by community service, daily prayers, and moments of reflection. However, as time passed, something began to change. The world around her seemed to be slowly falling apart. Maria heard stories of natural disasters ravaging distant places, of political conflicts and tensions, and a growing sense that something much greater was coming. The atmosphere of uncertainty and fear took hold of her certainties, and Maria began to question her own place in the world. She asked herself, "Am I prepared? Would I be one of the chosen?" Doubt began to grow in her heart, especially when she heard about the 144,000, those who would be saved. For Maria, it seemed there was an expectation about how one could be included in this mysterious number. But she didn't fully understand what it meant to be among the chosen. Was it about actions, faith, or just fate? One Sunday, as she attended the service in her small village church, something extraordinary happened. The pastor, during the reading of a passage from the Bible, mentioned the 144,000 again, but this time his words resonated deeply within Maria. He said with an authority she had never heard before, "Only the 144,000 will be saved in the last days. They are the chosen ones, those who walk the path of truth, who remain firm in their faith and devotion to God." The words of the pastor fell like a weight on Maria's heart. She felt that, in that moment, something was unlocked within her. Her faith, which had always been strong, now felt more urgent than ever. What was required to be one of the chosen? How could she, a simple woman from a small village, fit into this glorious destiny? Maria felt she needed to do something, but what? It was more than just believing. It required something deeper, something she still didn't fully understand. That night, Maria could not sleep. The words of the pastor echoed in her mind, repeating themselves incessantly. She got up, feeling an unease in her chest, and went to the small altar in her home. There, in front of a lit candle, she knelt and began to pray. But it was not a common prayer, like the ones she said every day. It was a prayer intense and deep, almost like a cry from her soul. She prayed not only for herself, but for her family, for her village, and for all those around her. She knew that, more than ever, the moment was coming, and she had to be prepared. "Lord," she prayed, "I am here before you, asking that you show me the way. I want to be one of your chosen, but I know this is not about a number. I want to stand by your side, not just at the end of days, but now, in every step I take. Guide me, Lord. Give me wisdom and strength to be faithful." Maria felt herself immersed in a deep peace, something she could not describe. The words flowed from her mouth like a river, and her soul felt lighter, as if a weight she had carried for years had been removed. She knew that the true path of salvation was not about titles, numbers, or promises. It was about inner transformation, true devotion, and service to others as Jesus had taught. With this renewed understanding, Maria rose from her prayer with a sense of clarity. The transformation she was seeking would not come from the outside, but from within. She knew that, to be one of the chosen, she would have to live according to the principles God had set for her: humility, unconditional love, and unwavering faith. She understood that faith was not a passive belief, but an active daily commitment to truth and good. As the world around her began to fracture further, with news of disasters and crises spreading more and more, Maria saw a change within herself. The fear that overtook the people around her did not affect her in the same way. Instead, she felt a fire inside her, a drive that pushed her to continue, to do more, to help more. She knew her purpose was becoming clearer with each passing day. She began to dedicate more time to others, especially those in need. During the week, she helped the elderly in her village, brought food to the needy, and prayed with those who had lost hope. Maria understood that being one of the chosen was not about isolating herself on a pedestal, but living the life Jesus demonstrated, a life of service, compassion, and active faith. As time passed, the world around Maria seemed to become more unpredictable. News arrived faster, and every day another disaster seemed to occur. The cities around her village were facing wars, earthquakes, and floods. Poverty was growing, and people, overwhelmed by fear, were seeking solutions in the wrong places, often turning away from faith. But Maria remained firm. She knew her faith was the only solid foundation in such an unstable world. Yet even so, doubts still lingered in her mind. How would the future unfold? Was she truly ready for what was coming? The words of the pastor echoed in her mind, but she knew it wasn't a mere personal challenge. It was something much bigger. The fate of the world was at stake. Amidst all the confusion, Maria did not lose sight of her purpose. She knew that, even in such difficult times, the path of faith did not disappear. On the contrary, it became clearer, more necessary. She continued to help others, spreading a message of hope and love. But there were moments, in silence, when she questioned whether her efforts were truly making a difference. One day, while walking through the village, she met an old friend, João, who looked visibly distressed. He had lost everything in a fire and was without hope. Maria, as always, welcomed him with comforting words and a tight hug. But that day, something ignited inside her. She looked at João and said, with a firmness that she hadn't known she had, "João, what you've lost can be rebuilt. What matters now is our faith. We cannot let fear control us. What defines us is our ability to move forward, to love, and to serve." Maria's words were not just a comfort, but a reminder to herself that her mission was bigger than her doubts. Fear and anxiety could dominate anyone, but true faith was the strength that kept them standing. Maria realized in that moment that her role was not to be a spectator of the suffering in the world, but an active participant in the stage of transformation. That night, she went home and knelt once again. The prayers began to flow from her soul as never before. She asked not only for her own salvation, but for the salvation of everyone around her. Maria felt for the first time that the words of the pastor were not a burden, but a call to action. She didn't need to worry about numbers or who would be saved, but she needed to live her life according to the principles of love, faith, and service to God and others. The next morning, Maria woke up with a different feeling. Her heart was light, but at the same time, there was a subtle pressure, as if something was about to happen. She didn't know what it was, but she felt her journey was about to take a big step. With this in mind, she decided to spend the day in prayer, seeking more clarity. She retreated to a quiet field outside the village, where she sat on the grass and closed her eyes, surrendering to prayer with fervor. That was when something extraordinary happened. Maria began to feel a presence around her, a sensation of peace that filled her being. When she opened her eyes, she saw a vision that left her speechless. She was in a vast field surrounded by a large crowd of people. There was something special about them, a deep calm and an expression of serenity, but also determination. They were all united with a single purpose, the search for truth. In the middle of that crowd, a brilliant light illuminated everything around it. It was an indescribable, pure, radiant light. Maria couldn't see the face of the figure in the light, but she knew it was an angelic being. He was standing, guiding the crowd, leading them with grace and authority. He seemed to be the personification of hope and trust, and all those who followed him were at peace, as if the light emanating from him was purifying them. Maria felt a shiver around her, but also an indescribable peace. She knew with absolute certainty that she was among the chosen. The vision was clear. The 144,000 were not just a number, but a representation of those who had understood the true purpose of life. Those who, despite difficulties, had chosen to follow the truth, live with humility, and embody unconditional love. The vision lasted only a few minutes, but for Maria, it was enough for a complete transformation. When she woke from the trance, the vision still vivid in her mind, she felt an absolute certainty in her heart. It wasn't about a literal number, but about an inner journey, a journey of faith that required dedication, sacrifice, and the ability to live life with true devotion. Maria knew that, although the world around her was on the brink of collapse, she had found her peace. Her mission was clearer than ever. She no longer needed to worry about numbers or who would be saved, but about what she could do to lead others to a similar transformation. The true purpose of life was to live with love, serve others, and remain firm in faith, no matter what happened around her. With this renewal of spirit, Maria felt ready to share her vision with the world. She was no longer alone in her journey. The path was clear, and she knew she had to move forward with courage and confidence, spreading her faith and light to those around her. With the vision Maria had, something deeply transformative took hold of her life. The clarity she felt in her heart never left her. She understood that the true path to becoming one of the chosen wasn't in the incessant search for external signs, but in the daily cultivation of faith and unconditional love. Her journey had just begun, and she knew it would require patience with herself and others. She spent the following days reflecting on what it really meant to follow the path of truth. The world around her was in chaos, but Maria found strength to live differently. She began to understand that her mission wasn't just to wait for a distant future, but to act in the present, transforming her own life and helping others do the same. She knew that true salvation came from an inner change, not from external actions. Each day, Maria took concrete steps to live according to the principles of faith that had been renewed within her. She visited the sick, helped the families in need, and spent time in prayer and meditation. Her acts of love and compassion became the key to helping her understand more deeply the mission God had for her. It wasn't about being recognized or performing great feats. Maria knew that, deep down, what truly mattered was being faithful, being a light to those around her. What Maria began to realize was that while the world seemed to be sinking into uncertainty, she was more centered than ever. She was being shaped not from the outside, but from the inside. Her trust in God and her personal mission intensified. It was no longer about doubts or questioning, but about faith that sustained her in every moment. One afternoon, while walking through the village, she saw a man standing at his door, a look of despair on his face. He seemed to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders, and Maria immediately approached him. It was a man who had turned away from faith, no longer believing in anything. He was desperate and without hope. Maria invited him to sit and gently asked him what was troubling him. The man began to pour out his heart about the losses he had suffered, how life had dealt him blows that had left him confused and lost. Maria, with all her patience and humility, listened intently. When he finished, she simply said, "I understand the pain you carry, but know that true peace doesn't come from the outside. It comes from within. Only when we let go of fear and place our faith in God can we find true freedom. No matter how much the world around us disintegrates, if we have faith and love, nothing can separate us from true peace." Maria's words touched the man deeply. He didn't say anything at the moment, but his expression softened. Maria felt an immense peace for having been an instrument of God in that moment. She knew that this was the kind of transformation that mattered. It wasn't about convincing others of salvation, but about being a reflection of the divine light for everyone who crossed her path. Maria's journey was now clearer. She was no longer concerned with the distant future, but with the present. She knew that her mission was to live with integrity, to serve others, and to let God's love flow freely from within her. She was ready to face whatever came, with the certainty that she was following the path of true transformation. As the days passed, Maria found herself more deeply involved in her mission. She felt as though her life had finally found its true purpose. There was no more space for uncertainty or hesitation. Her faith had become the force that propelled her forward, and she knew that now she had the responsibility to spread that light to others. Maria began gathering the people from her community, talking to them about the difficult times they were facing. People were lost, directionless, and many had started to question their faith, even turning away from it. She understood that the times were uncertain, but she saw no reason to lose hope. On the contrary, she believed that true faith grew stronger when it was tested. Maria decided to take more concrete action and founded a small prayer group, where she taught others not just to pray, but to live according to the principles of love, faith, and devotion. This group began to grow, with more people seeking answers. They saw in Maria not only a spiritual leader, but a reflection of the true faith she preached. She didn't just talk about the Word of God, she lived it. She embodied the teachings of Christ in her daily actions, in every act of kindness, in every word of comfort, and especially in the way she helped others overcome their struggles. Over time, Maria saw many lives being transformed. Those who had turned away from faith began to return. Those who had been discouraged found strength to move forward. She felt that her mission was truly to be a guide for the lost, a beacon of light in the midst of darkness. The words of Jesus had never been so real to her. "You are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden." Maria knew that her life had become exactly that, a city on top of a hill, visible to all those in search of guidance and hope. One day, while she was at the local market, she met a man who seemed to be in deep agony. He was visibly distressed, and upon seeing her, he approached. Maria immediately recognized that he was struggling with the loss of a loved one, and his pain was palpable. Without hesitation, she invited him to sit and began to listen to him. The man spoke of how he felt alone, purposeless, and lost in the midst of his grief. Maria then spoke to him gently. "I understand the pain you feel, but loss is not the end. True life is in our relationship with God and with others. No matter how difficult your journey may seem, you can find peace by trusting in Him. He is always by your side, guiding, supporting, and through the love you share, you will find the strength to continue." Maria's words had a profound effect on the man. He looked at her with a more serene expression and said, "I never thought I could find peace, but you've shown me that there's more than just the pain. I believe I can find a path now." Maria remained silent, feeling immense gratitude. She knew her mission was this: to be the light that guides others to the truth, to peace, to love. She didn't need grand deeds or recognition. The simple act of being present and sharing the truth was enough. That night, as she prayed, Maria reflected on all that she had lived up until then. She felt indescribable peace because she knew her purpose was being fulfilled. She no longer cared about numbers or whether she was one of the 144,000. What mattered was what she was doing now, living her faith and transforming lives around her. As time went on, Maria began to realize that her mission was expanding in ways she had never imagined. The small community she had formed around her faith was growing, and more people were starting to join her in their journey of transformation. But Maria knew that the path wasn't easy. The transformation she was seeking and promoting wasn't superficial. It wasn't something that happened overnight. It was something deep, something that touched the essence of each person, something that changed lives forever. She began to realize that true transformation didn't come from external actions, such as praying or doing good works. Although these things were important, true change happened inside each person, in the way someone viewed themselves, how they dealt with their fears, insecurities, and limitations. True transformation for Maria was accepting God's grace and allowing Him to shape the soul and heart. Every day was an opportunity for her to observe what was happening around her. People were beginning to change, to become more aware of their actions and thoughts. They were learning that true salvation wasn't about a final destination or something earned by doing good deeds, but something that came from the heart, from a commitment to love unconditionally and to seek truth. Maria felt an immense pride as she watched those who came to her begin to take control of their lives in a more conscious way. Some who had once surrendered to fear and despair were now calmer, more confident. They were no longer looking for answers outside themselves, but were finding peace as they connected with the inner God that Maria helped them discover. But true transformation, Maria knew, required sacrifice. She herself often found herself challenged by her own faith. There were moments when the difficulties of life and the suffering of those around her made her question if it all meant anything. She was witnessing so much loss, so much pain, and so many conflicts that, for a moment, she felt overwhelmed. It was in one of those moments, while praying for strength and guidance, that she had a powerful insight. God was not calling for salvation from those who lived without suffering, without hardships. The call to be one of the chosen was not about the absence of pain, but about the ability to love, to serve, and to live with faith, even in the face of suffering. Maria understood that true transformation wasn't what happened when everything was fine, but when someone could keep their faith and devotion to God, even in the darkest hours. She then made the decision to continue. She would keep helping others find the path of transformation, no matter how hard it was. She knew that true faith wasn't an escape from pain, but a way of facing it with courage and hope. Love and unwavering faith were the most powerful weapons she had. Maria knew she was not alone. The 144,000 were not an elite group of perfect people, but a group of individuals who, despite their flaws, had chosen to live with truth, humility, and love. She was one of them, and her journey was a continuous walk towards transformation. The end of time seemed to be drawing nearer. Maria felt that the moment to face what was coming was approaching, but strangely, she felt no fear. In her heart, there was a peace she could not explain, a certainty that, no matter what happened, she was ready. She had dedicated her life to understanding the true meaning of salvation, to living according to faith and love, and now she knew there was nothing left to fear. As the world around her continued to collapse with more wars, disasters, and signs of an uncertain future, Maria stood firm in her mission. She knew that, like the 144,000, the chosen were not just those who followed the dogmas of a religion, but those who lived with a pure heart, willing to serve others and live the truth with courage and love. For her, salvation wasn't a reward that came after the world ended, but something already present, within her and those around her, as a reflection of divine love. One day, while praying alone in her room, Maria had a clear revelation. She understood, without a doubt, that the number 144,000 wasn't literal, but a deep symbol of those who had completely surrendered to God, those who had purified their hearts and who, in their dedication to good and truth, were living true salvation. It didn't matter if the number was large or small. What mattered was the essence of the journey of faith and transformation. Maria felt a deep connection with all those around the world who were undergoing the same inner transformation. She was no longer a woman isolated in a distant village. She was part of something greater, a network of souls dedicated to living with faith, spreading love, and serving. The vision of being one of the chosen had expanded into something much bigger. What truly mattered wasn't the title or the number, but the transformed heart of each person who chose to live according to the principles of love and truth. At the moment Maria had this revelation, she felt immense peace, a peace that filled her entire being and seemed to transcend human understanding. She knew that, regardless of what happened in the future, she and all those living with love, humility, and faith had already found true salvation. The end of the world, if it was truly imminent, was not something to fear, because those who walked the path of truth were already, in a way, eternally secure. The day of judgment, as the scriptures said, wasn't about counting people, but about the purity of the heart. And Maria knew that her heart was clean, ready to live eternity with God. She had fulfilled her mission, helping others find the way to salvation and living with faith, love, and courage. In the end, she realized that being one of the chosen didn't mean being a person separate from others. On the contrary, being chosen meant being part of a whole, a community of souls united by the same purpose: to live in truth, spread love, and serve. And so Maria continued her journey with peace in her heart, knowing that in God all those who lived with love and truth were indeed the truly chosen. Maria learned throughout her journey that true salvation is not about a specific number of people, nor about a distant promise of the end of the world. Salvation is a personal, deep, and transformative experience that happens in the heart of each individual. It is not about being part of an exclusive group, but about living with faith, truth, and unconditional love every day. True salvation is an ongoing process of inner purification, of constantly seeking connection with God and with others. While the world around her continued to disintegrate in chaos and uncertainty, Maria discovered that peace and security do not lie in external circumstances, but in unwavering trust in God. Facing the difficulties, she understood that salvation was not about escaping pain, but about facing it with love and faith. Through this process, true transformation occurs. Each of us is called to live with a greater purpose, to be a light in the world, and to help others find the way to inner peace. Like Maria, we are invited to not just wait for salvation, but to work for it every day. This means living with love, caring for others, seeking truth, and being faithful to our mission. When we surrender to these principles, we find true freedom, true peace, and a true connection with God. Maria's journey is a reminder that salvation is not about numbers, but about transformed hearts. It doesn't matter how many of the chosen there are, but how sincerely we live our faith and how we treat others with compassion, humility, and love. What truly matters is that we live our truth with courage and dedication. In doing so, at the end of our lives, we can be sure that we were indeed chosen to live with God, because in the end, true salvation is living according to His eternal love and infinite truth.